the respect, the respected Dean of Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliya of Islamic Religious Knowledge and Human Sciences, Professor Shukran Abdul Rahman, the respected Head of the Department of Political Science, Associate Professor Dr. Shaza Shukri, and the respected esteemed colleagues of the Department of Political Science, and the respected participants who have joined with us tonight from all parts of the world, and the guest speakers of today's event. I warmly welcome you all to our highly anticipated webinar on global war on terror and the rise of Islamophobia, which is actually the fourth webinar of the webinar series on securitization of Islam and the global discourses of counterterrorism, reimagining an alternative paradigm, organized by the Policy and Area Studies Research Unit of the Department of Political Science at International Islamic University of Malaysia. I am your moderator for today's session. My name is Dr. Zaki Faus, Assistant Professor in the Department of Political Science at International Islamic University of Malaysia. Actually, we are thrilled to have each and every one of you here today. So before we dive in, let me take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to all our participants in today's session. And let me share a note about the context and objective of this webinar today. The webinar aims to address the complex and a critical topic, the ways in which Islam has been framed within the global counterterrorism narratives and the resulting societal and policy implications. As counterterrorism measures continue to expand globally, the identification of Islam with security risks and threat remains a pervasive trend, impacting millions of people, shaping public perceptions and influencing policies across the borders. So the securitization of Islam has not only led to a significant political and social consequences for Muslim communities, but it has also sparked an urgent conversation about human rights, cultural integrity, and religious freedom. This framing often creates and reinforces stereotypes, subjecting Muslim populations to disproportionate surveillance, exclusion, and stigmatization. In today's discussion, actually, we aim to unpack these complex dynamics. We will analyze the assumptions and motivations underpinning the global counterterrorism policies and practices, exploring how they influence laws, policies, and intergroup relations. But beyond that, our webinar seeks to reimagine actually an alternative paradigm, one that prioritizes inclusivity, trust, mutual respect, rather than division and fear among communities. To take us deeper into these dynamics, we have invited two experts on the subject who are none other than Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi and Professor Mizan Aslam. I would like to briefly introduce both, though both the speakers are well known locally and globally. And first, Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi is an assistant professor at the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAC, IIUM. Besides that, he holds various external positions such as Associate Fellow at the International Center for Counterterrorism, The Hague, Netherlands, International Advisory Committee member at Global Peace Institute, United Kingdom, Associate Research Fellow at the Accounting Research Institute, University Technology Mara, Malaysia, and former head of responsible research and innovation at ISTAG. And he's also part of the research team appointed by the Institute of Public Security of Malaysia and Ministry of Home Affairs to develop National Action Plan for Preventing Counterterrorism and Extremism in Malaysia. In addition to that, he has been regularly consulted by national international bodies on the issues of security and terrorism in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. Professor Mizan Aslam holds a position as a professor in security and strategic studies at the National Defense University of Malaysia. Professor Mizan also a senior fellow at the Global Peace Institute, United Kingdom, and he holds a position as a national panel for de-radicalization, a special task force unit for rehabilitation program to terrorist inmates. Professor Mizan also works with the Prime Minister's Office and Ministry of Home Affairs of Malaysia in field research and developing programs on de-radicalization programs. Professor Mizan was also a former professor in counterterrorism studies at the Naif Arab University for Security Sciences, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where he established the Center for Terrorism and Extremism Studies. He holds a position as a board of trustee of Perdana Global Peace Foundation. And Professor Mizan also worked with Middle Eastern Institute in Washington, USA, as a country expert in analyzing terrorism and extremism issues in Southeast Asia and also Middle East and North Africa. He was a visiting scholar at the University of Hawaii in USA, Ibn Khaldun University, Istanbul, and Universitas Sultan Yusuf, Jakarta. So today we are honored to listen to two foremost experts in Malaysia on the subject, and we are very much honored to have them both today for our webinar. Finally, let me share a few information about today's program. Firstly, about the structure of the program. I think Dr. Ahmed initially will present his ideas for 15 to 20 minutes roughly. Then after Dr. Ahmed, Prof. Mizan will share his comments and his reflections for 20 minutes. After two speakers are done, we will open up the floor for Q&A session and comment session. The participants can ask questions directly by unmuting themselves, or they can write their questions in the chat box, so we will channel the questions to the respected speaker. Now it's time to listen to our speakers. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Ahmed Al-Muhammadi to share his initial thoughts on counterterrorism and the rise of Islamophobia and the Malaysian perspective. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, I cannot see myself actually in the screen.
Okay.
I think it's fine. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaki, for the introduction. My dear colleague, Professor Dr. Mizan, from UPNM, and also the participant online. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate and thanks the Policy and Area Studies Research Unit PASRU, the Department of Political Science at IUM, for initiating these programs and also continue organizing programs of this nature from time to time. I think this is something that I've been wishing to have for so long, and I'm very happy to see that Dr. Zaki and everybody else in the Department of Political Science taking this initiative to do these programs. And second things, the topic that we are going to talk about, actually, I prepared some slide that I would like to share with you. Just as a kind of talking point. The topic of our discussion tonight is a global war on terror, counter-terrorism, and the rise of Islamophobia, Malaysian perspective. In this discussion, if I may go straight to the point, there are three things that I would like to share with you. First of all, the global war on terror is a reaction to 9/11 2001 attacks. Second is a counter-terrorism approaches and its application. And number three is Islamophobia as byproduct of the global war on terror and CT approaches. First of all, let us go to the first point. My argument is global war on terror is actually a reaction to 9/11 attacks. And of course, when we talk about 9/11 attack, there was a kind of debates surrounding the issue. Some of them says that it is being staged, some of being planned, And some of them believe it is really happening. It is conducted, is a special operation conducted by Al-Qaeda operative, led by the um, person by the Egyptian, and various other members of the Al-Qaeda operative uh, based in Afghanistan, and later on they travel all over the world. And then before the attacks happened, including some of them came to Malaysia for a while before they went to the United States. Whatever it is, the event has taken place. And in reaction to that, we have to look at from the US perspective. I mean, how they interpret the event. They interpret the event as the equivalent to Pearl Harbor attacks during World War II in 1945. That is the first thing that it is quite noticeable in their narrative. The attacks 9/11 is actually second after Pearl Harbor. And you have to remember, whenever you talk about Pearl Harbor attack against the United States during World War II, 1945, and what happened next was a very, very tremendous implication, it's unimaginable, because the result or the outcome of the Pearl Harbor attack was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that would end the World War II. So, you know, the implication, whenever the US is viewing the attacks as the Pearl Harbor attacks equivalent, the implication also could quite great. And as you can see, they also view that the attack was the attacks against American values, the symbol of power and pride. And if we look at from the intelligence community's perspective, it is viewed as the intelligence failure or the inability to connect the dots. They have the information. Every intelligence community, they have the intelligence, they have the information about the impending attacks, but they do not share information because of the compartmentalization, because of the bureaucratic rivalry, and so on. So therefore, the intelligence not being shared, is not being processed, the ability to connect the dot, therefore, it led to the attacks. And the attack itself also actually changed the rule of the game in every aspect, in every sense. If you used to travel before 9/11, you can see how different it is. The checking process at the airport. You know, after 9/11, everything has changed until today. You know, before pre-9/11 boarding, departure and boarding process was quite easy. Even the checking at the gate is very easy. There is no sniffing dogs. There is no, double check and then go through the X-ray machine and so on. There is nothing like that. But after 9/11, everything has changed. I mean, that I'm talking about one aspect of the change. There are so many other things that change also after that. As a result of this attack also, all resources are devoted to destroy the remnant of the attackers and to prevent future attacks, definitely. And George W. Bush, who made the statement, whether you are with us or against us. So it's draw the line, who is the friend and who is the enemies. So here, if we are talk about the intelligence chief in every country, they have a decision to make, whether they want to be with whether they want to cooperate with the CIA and also the American government, or whether they don't want to cooperate with them. So our government in this context has decided to work together and to dismantle the terrorist organization identified by the US government. Therefore, yeah, that's why it's led to the dismantle of the Jemaah Islamiyah and then the arrest of their members here in Malaysia and everywhere in the world, including those two persons who last week actually been handed over to Malaysian government by the US, who were staying in Guantanamo Bay for almost 19 years, very long, without any trial. And that two gentlemen who were in the Guantanamo Bay was part of the rendition programs. Rendition program is giving the power to the American officer, to the CIA, to arrest anybody around the world, wherever they are, and put them in a certain country for interrogation in order to extract information. And after that, some of them being sent to Guantanamo Bay, and definitely these two gentlemen being arrested in Bangkok, they were sent to the Guantanamo Bay as well. And there are so many other people as well who were being fall victim to these rendition programs and stay in Guantanamo Bay. There was also a report about the human rights abuses, such as waterboarding, sleep deprivation, and tens other techniques of enhanced interrogation techniques that the CIA was using. So that was the reaction, the massive reaction that you can see happen. So I think that is the first part that we have to understand, the reaction to 9/11 attacks. That is the background that we have to understand that leads to um, um, association with the Islamophobia that comes later on. So now we come to the second theme, that is counterterrorism approaches. So I would say we can divide the counterterrorism approaches into two perspectives. One is from the Western approach to counterterrorism, and the non-Western approach to counterterrorism approaches. So let us talk about the Western approaches. Western approaches to counterterrorism is the use of kinetic forces, the use of military intervention, the use of military power, the use of the military approach in arresting, destroying, and invasion, basically. So that is first part of the counterterrorism approaches. And the second part is the Western media also seize the opportunity to portray the image, certain image, and to associate certain image. So I think this is what it's led to the Islamophobia later on. I will speak about that later on in a little bit. But the counterterrorism is the use of kinetic approach, that number one, and the Western media also play the role. So this is very interesting because it leads to the Islamophobia. Seizing the opportunity is when things happen like this, all right, they don't create the situation is present. So the best way for us to think about how can we use this opportunity to work in our favor. So definitely then there are certain interested, vested interest group, especially the Western media, portray the image of Islam under certain light. Association with Islam and Muslim with terrorism. If you look at what happened in the United States right now, there are so many attacks. The attack using guns, right? I think last week it's happened that leads to the attacker was a girl who attacked the school and who attacked the community. They don't use the word terrorism, never. However, imagine if the attack is actually conducted by Muslim. Definitely, they don't say, they don't portray, or they don't use the narrative of this is the psychologically disturbed individual. But if it is done by someone else who is non-Muslim, they're going to say, I think the portrayal of the media and also the perspective or the perception of associating with Islam with terrorism is quite messy. That actually contribute to that. Okay, so I'm not going to elaborate on this too much. I'm going to focus on Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a byproduct of the global war on terror. As I said before, 9/11 happened, and it was conducted by the Al-Qaeda operative. So we accept the premise. From the Western point of view, especially from the Western point of view, they would think, or they would say, how can we exploit this event to our advantage? So they see the crisis. They see the crisis and opportunity. It's an opportunity to manufacture certain news or to portray the image of certain people under certain light. So I think this is what it's led to the emergence or to the rise of Islamophobia. So when you read the news, for example, therefore, when you read the news, everybody read news, right? You wake up in the morning, you open the news, whether it is a newspaper, the physical one, or whether it is online, whether it is a digital one, you read the news. Your reaction to the news is actually what they wanted to see, how you react to the news. When we wake up in the morning, early in the morning, you read the news, you're going to wake up, you're going to react to the certain news. So the image, the portrayal of, let's say they put the image of Muslim and then therefore the word terrorism there, that's what's going to stick. And you are going to have a certain reaction in your body. it is a very rare for us to find out news behind the news. Okay, because there is a news which is happening behind what is being reported. What is being reported is the end product of certain things which is happening before. It is not just like, okay, I'm reporting a facts here. There is nothing like it, actually. There is some news, there is some background to what is happening. So it is very uncommon, I would say, for people to ask or to, question, what does it mean by this news? And looking closely, analyzing closely how the news is being crafted, how the news is being narrated in certain way, certain word is used, certain picture is used. So what do you see in the news is actually a tip of an iceberg. You cannot see what is below the surface. What is below the surface is something else. So for those people who believe that we can control the public mind by using information, because information this day is actually a weapon that you can trigger something. Okay, so if you got this understanding, you wouldn't bother to read the news because the news is for the public. What do you see is actually what is meant for the public, not what is meant for the professional researcher, for the professional intelligence officer. No, intelligence officer never read news. They read news for the sake of knowing what's going on. But what the actual event that has happened is not being reported in the news. So therefore, by having this kind of understanding, you can imagine that you can use certain word, you can use certain picture in order to portray certain event, in order to give a certain impression on whether it is on religion or whether on a certain people. In this context is on Islam. So as you can see right now, the use of the word Islam and its association with Islamophobia is quite massive. It's quite massive in the media, especially in the Western media. All right? But anyway, as I said, the event of 9/11 is a real thing. It's a real thing. It's happened. It is committed. It is conducted by Muslim group, Al-Qaeda. So we admit these two facts. One is it is really happening. The other one, it is. So which means there are certain people, there are certain group in the Muslim community who has the radical ideas, who has the radical ideology, who has extremist ideology, who has been radicalized with certain ideas, and therefore they act based on that idea. That's why it is called violent extremism, because it is violent committed based on the belief of extremist belief. So there are people. And of course, we also have to say that this kind of thing, it is not new in Islamic history, in the Muslim history, in the Muslim civilization. During Sayyidina Ali's time, for example, there are a group they call Khawarij. The Khawarij is those people who are against the administration or the government of Ali and Osman. They fight against them actually, but they are claiming they are very religious. So we have this group Khawarij as well today who are believing that those people who do not implement Islamic law and they're reciting Quranic verses, they are using religious justification. La hukma illa billah wa man lam yahkum bima anzalallah fa ulaika humul kafirun. They use these Quranic verses as justification that any government, any rulers who do not implement Islamic law, who do not base the law on Islam, Islamic principle, they are kafir. They are become unbelievers. So then, they are conducting this kind of oppression in this context of the 9/11. And definitely, as I said, that people seize the opportunity and they ask the question, how can we exploit something like this in order to work in their favor? And they manufacture the news. And that news actually leads. So we are therefore having these two realities. One is the existence of really extremist group in the Muslim community, and the other one is there are already people who try to seize any opportunity available to portray Islam and Muslim in certain lights. And sometimes, we also have this dilemma here in Malaysia. There, certain people like to use the certain terms like jihadist or Islamist or Salafist. And when in the discourse of in the terrorism studies, the word khilafah, these are a sacred terms, I would say. These are a noble terms. Jihad, for example, Islam, Salafi, and khilafah. These are noble terms. These are sacred terms. But it has been contaminated because of the certain group of people has misused it. So for non-Muslim, in the eyes of non-Muslim, they're going to say there is something wrong with Islam. There is something wrong with Islam. There's something wrong with Muslim. And that's actually caused the fear, irrational worries and concern. Even though the majority of Muslim around the world is a peace-loving people, but because of the certain group of people actually involved in this kind of violent act, and is actually give the negative image for the whole Muslim around the world. And therefore, when we use this kind of thing, definitely it has certain implication. My last point, I think, because I have covered three themes already, my last point is, in Malaysia's context, for example, I myself and Dr. Mizan, Prof. Mizan also involved. We involved in rehabilitation programs. We met with the people who were detained under terrorism law in Malaysia in prison, and we researched on this issue as well. Sometimes I think that we also face the dilemma. What is the best terms that we can use? Terrorist or extremist or radical? What is the term? And so finally, in my context, I never use the word terrorist when I met with people who are detained in prison. I don't use it. Because I think the word is very offensive. Just like the word Negro in the United States in the 60s. We don't call these people Negro because it's a very offensive term. So I think the same thing with the word terrorist or jihadis and Islamist, Salafis, I think is quite offensive. And we had to use it at the right time and place, in the right context. We cannot just writing that way. I'm not sure whether I used to use that kind of term in my articles, but if I use it, I don't mean to contaminate the sacred terms of Islam by attributing this to the act of violence or anything. All right, so we have to face this reality, I mean, in our case as well. And the second one is, as I say, the counterterrorism approach is the mostly kinetic approaches. In our context in Malaysia, we take a very, very cautious approach. I call this a judicious approach. How do we do this? We create or we establish the rehabilitation programs, which means that there is an interaction and dialogue. We open up the space for the detainee who are detained in prison. Well, definitely they've been detained in prison because of a certain violation of laws, penal code, for example, and they were detained under certain legal provision. For example, before in 2012, there is the Internal Security Act, ICA, and then after that we have the Security Offences Special Measures and other laws that we had. But during that detention, there is a rehabilitation program being done, which is basically a dialogue. Okay, so there is an interaction happen, especially focusing on justification of the involvement in the group, how they understand certain concept and that kind of stuff. So indigenous approach like this is non-existent in the Western world. I remember in 2015, I was in the States, and with another colleague from Singapore, we went to this US Department of State and they're having a discussion. And my colleague from Singapore pleading to make a case that the United States need to embrace rehabilitation programs for their detainees. And that was in 2015. And I never heard of that. What happened next, or whether or not they have rehabilitation program immediately after 2020, 15, because during that time it was under Obama's administration, and I think later on Donald Trump came. But whatever it is, recently I heard they also have organized a rehabilitation program for the US president. I'm not sure to what extent it is true, but what I'm trying to say here is that they moved from the use of kinetic approach to rehabilitation, which is originally the non-Western approaches, because there is a dialogue happen, and we try to address the ideological dimension of that problem. It is not just like arrest them, put them in prison, and forget about it. No, we also address psychological, ideological dimension of that. So I think that's all from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward for a discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad, for your insightful observations covering multiple perspectives and the complexity in terms of dealing with issue. And now I am moving to Professor Mizan Aslam for his intervention. Prof, the floor is yours.
Yep. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. So you can hear me, right?
Yeah, Prof.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Dr. Zaki, Chairman, and your team that initiate this program. I would like to congratulate for this timely and very important session. And to my dear brother, Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi. So I think glad to see me and Dr. Ahmad, okay, in this session, which is I think Dr. Zaki, this is first time me and Dr. Ahmad together in one session, which is only two of us. we've been together, but with a different panel. But this time, very glad to be here anyway. Okay. So and to all of our dearest beloved participants for this session, and thank you very much to have in this session. All right, I would like to share, and I think most of my idea, my presentation actually been covered by Dr. Ahmad. Me and Dr. Ahmad actually we doing almost similar thing in many aspects. We learn and we study about terrorism, not only in Malaysian context but in the global context. But during my presentation, I'll try to bring, especially in the global context first, before I zoom into the Malaysian context. And I think most of my view on this discipline actually same wavelength with Dr. Ahmad as well. And I think in my previous session, I also mentioned that when I joined or involved in this discipline, which is about 20 years ago, which is this is very like a very rare discipline at that time. And then after degree, my bachelor, and then the 9/11 happened. Okay, so it also somehow divert my ambition. I want to be a lawyer that time. Okay, and then 1998, something happened to our country, Malaysian country. Then I have changed my direction to be an academician. And until now, Alhamdulillah, I had lots of experience. And still learning, okay, meeting with many people, many experts in this industry, as well as terrorists and also terrorism experts. Okay, and okay, let me share my slides anyway, and then okay, Dr. Zaki, you can see me, right? You can see the slides, huh?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. All right. So okay, I will talk about the rise of religious radicalism. So I think we have to bear in mind. So when I first decided to embark in this discipline of knowledge, which is at that time when we talk about terrorism, and it's always related to Muslims, and it is something that very like a very sensitive, and I think Dr. Ahmad also mentioned about this, and to call Muslims as a terrorist, things like that, which is a very sensitive and taboo, especially to discuss about terrorism, even until now. However, from time to time, we can see the dynamic of this industry, especially the terrorism industry itself, and the changes happen rigorously. But terrorism study is still relevant, and I believe it will be like things that relevant in our daily life, maybe 2 years from now. Okay, so the first thing first, we have to bear in mind that terrorism ni actually is not only focusing on Muslims, and we have to know that all of the religion in this world have been hijacked by terrorism activities within the religion. So if we talk about, for example, about Hindu, they have Hindutva movement. If you talk about Buddha, they have Buddha like 969, headed by Ashin Wiratu, which is very extreme, and commit terrorist attack. And then also, if we talk about Christians, they have evangelists, and then far right extremists as well. Okay, and then if we talk about Jewish Judaism, they have Zionists also is one of the terrorist movement as well. And then Sikh, they also have a Sikh Khalsa Babar, the one who also involved in terrorism activities. So actually, all of the religions, all of the ethnics, can be hijacked by so-called terrorists. Okay, so in many aspects, actually, we sometimes we are confused to differentiate between this either freedom fighter or terrorist. And if we see especially the news, Western narrative news, and Dr. Ahmad also mentioned about this, and you can when we talk, for example, about the Syrian issue right now. Okay, if you go back, for example, before the 7th of December 2024, all right, before 7 December, Jaulani and HTS, which is Hayat Tahrir Ashami, been called as terrorists, and as a terrorist group. It's not only called, but it is in the list of terrorists under the CIA. But after the 7th of December, you can see the changes of this group. Instead of they being called terrorists, but now they've been called as freedom fighters, or as a liberation group. Rebellious, things like that. So even now, there are more words and to delist HTS and also Jaulani from the list of terrorists. So you can see who decided these people are terrorists or not. So actually, once they are a terrorist because they not means give any benefit for you, but after you give some benefit, or you can be negotiated, and you can bring the ideology of especially the Western narrative as a Western superpower, and then automatically they've been changed from terrorists to freedom fighters, liberalists, or whatsoever. But the same narrative I saw in many places, especially Western-led media, is mostly they will call people who fight for their own country as a terrorist. So that's why we have to be critical in analyzing all these group. Either they are a real terrorist or they are so-called rebellious or separatists, or even they are a freedom fighter for their own country. Okay, and the even until now, I think more than 20 years when this terrorism industry becomes so relevant in our daily life. Until now, they have no like a specific definition about terrorism and terrorism itself. So different entity, different person, they have different interpretation about terrorism. Okay. So let me just share with you a little bit the differences. So freedom fighters, someone who acts on behalf of civilians, and in direct opposition to a military government. So this is a very basic fundamental understanding and differentiation between these two. So freedom fighters mostly they protect themselves, resist for the um for the superpower who invade their country, or their means their area or their nation. So that's why like people in Gaza, or people in even in this country, Malaysia, for example, one day we've been attacked by any superpower, for example, or any country. So if we defend our country, means we are protecting our country, and we want freedom for our people. So we are a freedom fighter, and we resist such kind of attack or invasion. But however, what I see until now, when they attack any countries or they attack any part of the world, so they call this is anti-terrorism, or anti-terrorism, which is they call us as a terrorist, and they do that as anti-terrorism. But when we attack them back, or we try to defend our country, our soil, our sovereignty, so they call us terrorists. So this is a very like a very unfair in terms of definition. That's why I think now we have to be critical in terms of like understanding this thing, and try to disseminate the information about this. Because if you right now, if you just type about Syria, about Assad, I think for the first 20 news that come up in your Google searching, that's all talk bad about Assad. Talk bad about the regime itself. Okay, I'm not a supporter of Bashar al-Assad, or the Assad's regime, but anyway, we can see the flood of the news, especially from the Western narrative, to ensure that we believe the HTS is a great movement. HTS is the one who fight for the freedom of their people, and now they are on power on and all sorts of things. Okay, but I went to Syria last time. I came both sides, either from Damascus once so I know, and I met people under the regime Assad, and once I was in on the other side, which is I came from Turkey, from Iskenderun. So I've been to Idlib, to Raqqa, to Aleppo, which is on the side of which is the area that controlled by HTS, and also YWG. There are some PKKs as well, and then they have a different like a view on the Syrian government as well. So actually, this is a very fundamental, I think, issue that we have to understand. Okay, in terms of the news that been or the narrative that been disseminated around us, and how it will influence our thinking, our mindset towards the issue. Okay, But the real winner of Syrian issue for me is Israel, Israel, and also Turkey and America. Definitely, they continue to control, especially area that have oil-rich area, such as Deir Azur, and also all sorts of the area that are close to the Iraq border. Okay. Yeah, not much time left. Sorry, Dr. Zaki. All right. So, terrorists. Okay, now we go for terrorists. Okay, they have features of terrorists. Okay, for example, terrorism features, they create fear, which is the psychologically, that's what they want. Which is even we can see certain attack by terrorists. They know that they won't like a success. For example, in our country, we've been attacked. In Malaysia, we've been attacked by Sulu or the Kiram's Sultanate. Okay, they know that they fight with the country. They know that they won't win that war, but they just want to attack to deliver the message to create fear to the people, and so do the same thing have been done by Israel as well. That's why I'm not put any reservation. I said IDF and Israel is a terrorist state and terrorist organization. All right. And then destruction. Okay, we know that lots of area coercive, been blast. Okay, and if we go back to the means to the what we call it the methods or the ideology behind the IDF, for example, Dahia and as well as of Hannibal, which is to make destruction, to disrupt whatever in front of them. Doesn't matter whether it is the sacred place or hospital, schools, even houses, and they will kill whatever they can and they want. And that's why if we see and we try to understand even Russia, so some people say that I support a communist, but actually I'm not. And I think if we go deeper and then we try to understand, Russia have any sorts of fighter jet, but they don't use that to kill civilians, to make big destruction or any destruction, but they just use infantry and killing especially the military, rather than they kill civilians. Okay, all right. Okay, that's to mass specific or not, and this is have been done also by the Israel as well. And we can see, and if you remember, especially during the peak of ISIS, for example, lots of videos, lots of photos about those who've been kidnapped or been in prison by ISIS. Okay, so decapitated, beheading, all right, and all sorts of like even they burn their the people that been arrested. It did happen, but now the same thing have been done by Israel as well. And if last time ISIS also show it to the media, the same thing happened now. The IDF members also uploaded the videos and the photos in TikTok or whatsoever. Actually, the same thing. That's why when I go to the terrorism features, actually the same thing have been repeated. Okay, all right. And then political agenda. We know that all of the terrorist group, they have their own agenda, what they want to establish at the end, either a greater empire or caliphate, or the greater Israel, or make America good again, great again, or whatsoever. So that's the political agenda. Okay, nothing actually gear them towards that activities without the agenda. Okay, all right. And then dynamic and nature, so we know that how they kill and how cruel they are. Okay, all right. And then okay, give me like another 5 minutes, Dr. Zaki.
Yeah,
Okay,
you have 5 minutes, bro.
okay. And then this is we have to understand also why the resistance happen, why this conflict happen. Okay, there must be a reason. So things cannot happen just without any reason, or it just happened like that. It must be a reason. So someone won't knock you, won't hit you, or bump on you without a reason. There must be a reason. And if we understand the reason, for example, an empire or a country that exists before and then suddenly disappear because of colonization. So for me, colonization is the biggest problem. They create the problems, which is never ending problem until now, right? And then the jihad actually is a very noble term, very like a sacred term that have been like manipulated, especially by the enemy of especially Islam, and also many religion. I believe the same thing, and they study about the weaknesses within the society, all right, and then they will manipulate that for their own benefit. Okay, double standard media, as we discussed before. Okay, a lots of issues have been actually on their side rather than our side. For example, if you if you remember the satire, the cartoon that been published in magazine in France, in Denmark. Okay, so they just crafted very bad things about Islam, things like that. But Muslims never retaliate, do the same thing towards Jesus or towards any religion. Okay. All right, and then political agenda, unfulfilled. Actually, this is another issue also. Every movement, they have their own political agenda, and actually, if, for example, any countries, any party not address it accordingly, and then they will find their own way to deliver the message, especially to the people, right? And I believe, like I said, in many places, the ideology is a political ideology. It flows like a water. So we have to maneuver them accordingly. Otherwise, they will find their own way, which is will be hard for us to control them later on. Okay, and then interracial tense happen in Malaysia and also in many places. Okay, I think I want to stop there. Okay, and then I just want to tell you that actually nowadays another issue that we have to understand also the changes. Like I said at the beginning, the dynamic of this industry, now the changes between FTF and also FF. Okay, last time we talked about foreign terrorism, foreign terrorist fighters. So now new things come up, which is it looks like been normalized, so-called foreign fighters. So those days who go to Syria or Iraq to join ISIS, so been called as terrorist fighters, FTF, even in Afghanistan. But now those who join Wagner on behalf of Russia, or who join IDF, okay, to fight for Israel, okay, it come from everywhere, even from our neighboring country, if talking about Malaysia. So these people, they call it as freedom fighters. Even in America, in UK, in Europe, they openly make online interview for those who wants to join them, this movement. Even in Ukraine, they have Azov and Ida battalion and many battalions as well, and then they've been paid monthly, like mercenaries right now. So which is a very interesting movement in this industry that we have to bear in mind in near future. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Zaki. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof, for your very interesting observations, some really critical ideas that you shared with us today. And so now it's time for Q&A session and comment session. So if you have any questions or observations, so you can share with us. If you want to ask any questions, you can unmute and ask the question. Let me check in the chat box. Uh,
Dr. Zaki.
yeah,
So I saw one of the question here from Zoe,
yeah,
okay, which is she asked about the Islamic phobia,
yeah.
and how to measure in
Measure it in
geopolitical
geopolitical context. Yeah.
context, yeah. Which is this is very interesting question, and as far as I know, the Islamophobia actually is a term that become like a big issue, especially in Europe, and also in Muslim minority country. So the when we just if we see country that have a majority Muslims, even in Malaysia or in for example in Saudi or in any Middle Eastern country, they have no so-called like Christomophobia or Hindumophobia, or Buddhist phobia or something like that. No, it didn't happen in Muslim country mostly. Yeah, that's as far as I know. But it did happen in the country that where the Muslim majority, minority. So and also another term that quite popular right now, instead of Islamophobia, they have so-called Islamophilia. Yeah, Islamophilia, which is people become uh, too like a yeah too close to the Islam, for example, until they become irrational in dealing things, in understanding certain things, and they become so what we call it like a ta'assub, or I mean like they become irrational, and they cannot think wisely when certain things come to them, and also whatever comes from the leaders, for them, they just accept without asking or any kind of like a discourse. So this is very very dangerous as well, and on top of that, in geopolitics issue, I think Islamophobia, it raised, and it increased from time to time, depends on the issues that happen, especially in certain countries, certain places, and it relates back to media. So that's why when, if for example during COVID time, so I saw media busy with COVID. So every day they update about COVID, about cases, about people who dying, things like that. So very less coverage on terrorism. Even I studied, is there any terrorism exists or happen during the COVID time? Yes, actually it happened in many places, but it didn't become a news, and then the news at that time, which is covered only for COVID-19, then suddenly it not popular, and it didn't inspire others to act like that. So actually, this is all related: the geopolitics issue, the media, the narrative, as well as the country that way they stay, when they have a movement, especially from those who have some political ideology to manipulate that issue for their own benefit. Thank you, Dr. Zaki.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Ahmad, there is a question for you that the a participant who asked that he would like to inquire about the Malaysian returnees from Guantanamo prison. Will they be detained again? Do you believe their return could contribute to increased Islamophobia? Such things. Can you reflect it on more?
Thank you very much for those who are asking the question. I think there are several questions that I would like to touch. Uh, Beginning with the when did Islamophobia start and how to measure it in the geopolitical issue. I mean, Prof. Aslam Mizan was addressing about this a little bit. I would like to chip in by sharing my perspective. In fact, the phenomena of Islamophobia is not new in Islamic history. Actually, if you look at the time of the Prophet, there are people who has the irrational fear of Islam, of Muslim, and it is spread around the people of Mecca, for example, in the Meccan society during the time of the Prophet, especially the beginning of Islam. The figures like Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, and his friends. They spread the narrative. They spread I would say, the Islamophobic narrative among the people in there. And definitely people get scared about Islam. And that was during the time of the Prophet. And this has continued uh, during the time of the prophets and during the time of Abu Bakr and so on and so forth. You can read, actually, you can make a make a comprehensive study beginning from the time of the Prophet to the Khulafa Rashidin, and after that during the during Umayyad, Abbasid, and Uthmaniyya empire. There are always constant perspective or negative perception about Islam and Muslim. All right, so that is in terms of history. The second one also, Zoe was asking about the penularan Islamophobia di dalam masyarakat Muslim. Yes, actually Islamophobia is also happen within the Muslim community. The fear of Islam and Muslim because of certain perception that they have, certain group of people who advocate the strict interpretation of Islam also can cause fear to others. So we have to fight the two fronts. One is the domestic fronts, domestic challenge that is among Muslim themselves and within the Muslim community, which means that it is within our community and outside our community, we also face the same thing. And now we come to the question by Khairul Akhtar, who are asking about the two Malaysians who just handed over by the US to Malaysia. They were staying in Guantanamo Bay for 19 years and they're returned back here to Malaysia right now. Of course, if you look at the statement by the Minister of Home Affairs, he said that we brought them back here. We try to, we make effort to bring back here is on the humanitarian reason and the universal justice. I think the minister has made very, very good statement, a very, very good stance here, because they've been detained for 19 years without any trial. They've been snatched from a foreign country and been sent in there and then not facing without any trial. And right now, the American government is ready to hand over to them, which is very good, and we accept them. And then we also, don't forget, we have a good rehabilitation program here in Malaysia that we can take care of. And we also actually create a special program for them according to the Minister of Home Affairs, which is actually very, very commendable efforts on the part of the minister and his team at the KDN, and also including the Counter-Terrorism Division, Malaysian Police. I would say maybe the programs that we used to have before is not perfect, but it works well. There are some weaknesses, there are some flaws, there is some improvement need to be made, but I would say it works. Why do I say it works? Because we have a low cases of recidivism. There are cases of recidivism. There are cases of relapse, people going back. But yes, I think that overall it works. Khairul Akhtar also asking about whether or not it's going to cause increase Islamophobia. I think maybe there are some people who try to play around with this narrative. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I believe that there are some people who might be using the issue or the return of these two Malaysians from Guantanamo Bay in their favor. I say, when things happen like this, some people who has a certain interest, they're going to ask, how can I exploit this news? Because Islamophobia is all about exploitation. Anything that happened, we can exploit it. So in this case, I think it is still possible that people can use this issue to spark or to trigger the Islamophobia. But I believe that if you look at from the experience side, from the experience-wise, there's a more balanced view perspective. I think that's they cannot succeed in making propaganda saying that it's going to cause more trouble to Malaysia.
Yan,
there is a question also about the
both Prof. Mizan and Prof. Ahmed reflect on that.
Insurgency, radicalization, includes all ASEAN members, ship of ASEAN next year, 2025. Easy, I'm sure. Being consulted by the Ministry of Affairs, what we are going to do with ASEAN. Because if you want to talk about the ASEAN perspective, and every ASEAN country is facing unique cases of terrorism threat in Thailand, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and in Singapore, maybe, and other countries as well. So how can we make this is relevant to all? I believe that in doing this, wisdom is needed. Wisdom is needed so that we can solve the problem without creating another problem. My presentation, counterterrorism approaches, which is Western-oriented counterterrorism approaches, is how can I say, has adverse consequences. What is it? Abuses of human rights, rendition programs, and Islamophobia. These are the byproduct of counterterrorism strategy, which is strongly implemented, and including, if you look at from UK, they have prevent. In UK, they have prevent strategy. It is actually initiated by the Home Office. It has backfired. Why? Because it is wrongly implemented. So I think in the context of ASEAN here, I believe that we did not hear anything yet. I think maybe Dr. Zaki, you can conduct this research. You can initiate the research about this. How you can advise Malaysian government how to proceed certain policy which is applicable in Malaysia question in certain terms. If that is the fact of things. So this is the nature.
So I would like to use my privilege being the moderator to ask the final question from the Muslim minority perspective, since both of our speakers are involved in policy making, and as you're all aware, that the regulating the religious space or religious freedom is the first policy response to any extremist act. If it can curtail, or does it risk further exacerbating the problem? How this religious freedom and also this radicalization, it negatively impacts most, as you both aware, in the Muslim minority context, that regulating the religious space, curtailing the religious freedom is the first response. So could you both reflect on that, how Muslim minorities, or generally we can approach this issue, how we can organize a response to such kind of policies that affect not only the extremists, but also the whole community as a consequence of few extremist actions or acts. So Dr. Ahmad and Prof. Miz, could you reflect on that?
Yeah, I would like to start first. There are 2 points I would like to mention. Number one, it is empirically proven curtailing religious spaces in the Muslim minority countries is going to backfire. It's not going to work. Yeah, I would say it's a policy dysfunction. It's a matter of policy dysfunction. That's number one. It's very important. Empirically proven. You can see any countries that try to close down the religious spaces for the minority, and they're going to have a blowback. In many cases, that people are going underground, creating more problem. They're not going to solve the problem because you are actually element of human life. The most doing it against you in future. That's number one. Number two, I think we should willing with this, not hard approach, not the punitive approach, but the judicious judicious approach, and also negotiative approach, meaning that we have to have a discussion with the Muslim community leaders, for example, in the context of Muslim, having a discussion. I think we should take the example of Singapore. I think the Singapore model of managing Muslim minority in Singapore is a very good example. They have a discussion and they agree that, okay, there are certain things that you need to do, and there are certain that you cannot do. And actually, it is applicable to other faith as well. I mean, let's say, I watched the documentary that after the government see that the freedom to practice their religion. And also, I think that is the wisdom that we should take. So in conclusion, judicious approach, not hard.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Prof. Mizan, your final comments?
Okay, yeah. So I would like to conclude. I think they have asking about living the non-Muslim. actually it is not about the Malaysian, so it happened to Singaporean as well who joined PKK before, right? And actually it happened to many countries also, those who join another group to kill, especially Muslim, because what they know, what they understand, especially from the narrative that came to them, Islam is a terrorist, Islam is a very bad things, and then we have to kill Islam or Muslims. So that's among the factors that make them join such group. And then also from, I think from Zisian, ZS, also asking about ASEAN. Okay, yes, next year we becoming the chairman of the ASEAN. Okay, and we should know that ASEAN also have, let's say in 2011 we create so-called ASEAN Convention on CT, Counter-Terrorism, ACCT, and then we got also CTT, which is a Counter-Terrorism Treaty, and we got a few operation called Gallant Phoenix and many more, done by the police and by the military to tackle the issue. So it will be very interesting, especially to see how Malaysia maneuver issues in Mindanao, and even now in Mindanao looks far better than before. Okay, in southern Thailand, the issue still exists. All right, it is more on separatism rather than terrorism. And also the big issue now is in Myanmar. That one also a challenge, especially for Malaysia as a chairman to tackle the issue. And as we know, the ICC also have issued the arrest warrant to Maung Laing, the general of junta Myanmar. And yet, to respond to your question, Dr. Zaki, I think I have same wavelength with Dr. Ahmad as well, and we have to understand that actually that's why this industry also known not only counter-terrorism but known as PCVE, preventing and countering violent extremism. So we have two things here. One is prevent, one is counter. Counter is more on short term, which is when things happen, the issue happen, then we have to reflect accordingly and in a very fast way. That's why counter, whether we use legal aspect or we use military, we use police to arrest, to capture them, put them behind the bar or whatsoever. But we don't forget, and we put it at the front normally, which is prevent. That one also another task that we need to work accordingly, and we have to nurture the understanding about terrorism and how any part of the society. That's why not only NGO, now we go to CSO, civil society organization, even a single individual like us also should play our role in disseminating the idea of countering violent extremism, and then also to help the government, the entity, the enforcement officer, and many more. And also the most important thing, for example, the religious leader, is to give and to disseminate the real connotation or the real explanation, understanding about religion itself. So it can happen to any religion, as I said at the beginning of my presentation. So thank you, Dr. Zaki, and I would like to congratulate you and your team for this session, and we'll talk again. Okay, and for those who have my contact, so we can communicate in the near future. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Mizan. So thank you. I think we should now conclude our session, since we are almost reached our allocated time. So I again thank all the guest speakers and the participants, mainly the guest speakers, for this insightful webinar. And actually, my personal feeling is that this webinar, taking into account all the interventions and ideas, actually it has illuminated the complex interplay between Islamophobia, radicalization, emphasizing the urgent need for nuanced approach that transcends simplistic narratives to approach this phenomenon. I think, and also, while Islamophobia fuels marginalization and can act as a catalyst already of the Muslim communities in resisting and countering extremism. Addressing these issues, as Dr. Ahmad and Mizan highlighted, requires fostering dialogue, promoting inclusive policies, and also safeguarding religious freedom, ensuring that efforts to combat radicalization should not perpetuate further cycle of alienation within communities. Thank you very much for your insights and observations, Dr. Ahmad, Dr. and Prof. Mizan. And before we wrap up, I again, on behalf of PASRU, Policy and Area Studies Research Unit, we express our deepest gratitude to our main speakers, Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi and Prof. Mizan Aslam, who shared with us some insightful observations and the developing dynamics within the discipline. And also a big thank you for our incredible audience and participants who have for their active engagement and thoughtful questions and those questions. And and also again, finally, I would like to thank the head, Dr. Mior Alif, the head of Policy and Area Studies Research Unit, and his team for wonderful arrangement and arrangements and facilitations to have this webinar smoothly. So thank you again for them. With that information, I conclude this webinar by reciting Dua al-Kafara. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Thank you, Prof. Muza.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again,
Allah.
inshallah, in the near
Great,
future.
inshallah.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Zaki. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Okay. Thank you all.